Yo, we out here once again. It's a buff missionary in these streets. And we got a plot twist yet again. So this is a doctorate update. And I was working on my paper yesterday, the last paper that I need to do to finish up my first year of the program. The assignment is a little bit late, I will acknowledge that. And it's because I've been flip-flopping around with what I want to study on. So the main part of my dissertation, my plan over these next few years is to focus on student missions and kind of how it started, the purpose of it, what it looks like in our schools, how it was the definition of school and how it became like a sideshow within schools and all that kind of stuff. So it's been easy to think, well, let me try to direct all of the assignments in these other classes that I'm doing in that direction. So I'm not having to do double work. So I'm not having to come back and do a whole lot of extra research in an area that's not focused in kind of the main goal, right? So with this paper, the history of mission paper, my original idea was to do like the history of mission in Palau. And eventually I thought, well, shoot, let me align these things and study kind of the history of student missions more. But I don't know what happened. But I ended up getting back into the idea of history of mission in Palau. And one of the reasons why I was kind of flip-flopping on that topic in particular, not only was it not directly in alignment with kind of the big picture of student missions and impacting that, but more specifically, it was the amount of information that was out there. I mentioned in a previous video how I was able to get like a slideshow PowerPoint, Secretary's report from GMM, Guam Micronesia Mission. And it has like these bullet points with a few sentences, a couple paragraphs on the history of mission in the different locations in Micronesia. Palau has 2 slides and each slide has 4 points. So there's not that much. And yet the 4 points on these 2 slides are actually covering the dates from as far back as the 1880s all the way up until today. So when you talk about summarizing that knowledge and being able to just say, here's what happened here, in 2 slides, and you're summarizing more than 150 years worth of history, it's like, where's the information? Where's the data? So in terms of research, it was going to be a challenge, and I knew that. And I was kind of nervous going into the paper with that as my topic, because it's got to be more than 7,000 words, which means between 30 and 40 pages, okay? And 20 plus, 30 plus sources that are needed as well. So it's like, man, where am I going to find this stuff? But in going through the slideshow, I decided to take it from the approach of, let me outline one of the points that is here. And I guess I should say this first. The reason that it's bullet pointed like this is because a lot of this stuff in the history in this part of the world is word of mouth. So there isn't a lot actually written down. In fact, the pastor that I got this information from, the one who was responsible for that secretary's report, his name actually shows up in the PowerPoint. So there's part of the experience that he's directly related to, but even then, it's not like he's given a whole lot of details on the stuff that was passed down to him before because it wasn't written down. So it's kind of just like out there to piece together in addition to the word of mouth stories that have been told. So my approach to this was going to be, let me take the statement that was made in the slideshow presentation and let me do the research on the history that backs that point up. Now, this approach is fascinating because now I'm researching literally the smallest of details within that little 1 to 2 sentence bullet point, and I'm trying to see what's recorded on this, what's the history on this, what's actually out there that can support this. And there are some pretty cool things that are coming from the research. It starts out with James Gibbons first, and his son, William Gibbons, and man, just being able to find information on these people to piece into the story that fits into it. I'll go through it later. Maybe not the whole thing, because 40 pages is going to be a heck of a long video. Well, maybe I'll do it section by section. We'll break it down like that when I finish the paper. All right. I'm about 30% done. It's gonna be crazy. But at any rate, it's been cool taking the approach of let me find the history that backs this up. Let me do the research and actually see what's there, especially because it hasn't been written down. So I even said it in the introduction to my paper. This by no means is exhaustive. It can't be, because I don't know what kind of information is out there in the world about this. And I don't believe that there's any chance that I get all of the information on the history of mission in Palau. So it can't be exhaustive, but it can be a lot more comprehensive and a lot more filled in than just these bullet points that mention a name and a date here. Now there might be more story that goes behind it. And from what I've found, there is a lot more really cool story that goes behind a lot of these bullet points that are just kind of thrown out there. So it's exciting to be able to put together something like this, and eventually to contribute that back to Palau, I think is very appealing because it gives more context to the story. And I know that for the 5 years that I spent out there as a missionary, some of the people that popped up in this thing, in this history, I had never heard of before. So I can only imagine what it's like for people actually in Palau who may or may not know these details, and how a lot of these big names are related to the history of Adventist mission in particular in Palau. So it makes it fun, and it definitely makes it worth investing into and exciting. And this weekend, I'm hoping to at least get up to 5,000 words. I got to double my output again. I spent all day yesterday working on this thing and doubled the output. So we'll see what we can do. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be fun. And yeah, I think in a couple weeks, I'm supposed to be registering for the second summer's worth of classes. So this, I will say this, all right? I'm definitely going to be more on my P's and Q's this time. First year in, okay. Baptism by fire, I got it, all right? But I'm not doing this again. I'm getting my stuff done early, like starting to figure out how to work the time into work and everything. I can't sit and wait for Christmas break to start doing stuff, be sitting idle for months. I need to start chipping away at it. And I learned that lesson, all right? We learn and we grow as we go. Just because I'm a doctoral student doesn't mean I got it all together. I've never done this before. It's my first time. So I'm figuring it out. And I'm glad for that. You live and you learn, you grow, and you do it again, but better. Shout out Coach Richie, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, really cool. I'm looking forward to completing this project, putting more work in on it, and just kind of bringing this information together. And I'll throw this in here before I finish. Just an idea of how the smallest detail can bring out so much more to the picture. I was doing research on, I believe it was William Gibbons. Maybe it was James Gibbons. I can't remember exactly which one. But there was a piece of a story that said that he ended up kind of being an intermediary between, I think it was James Gibbons. He ended up being an intermediary between the tribe that he was associated with and married into, and another, I think the northern tribe, a northern tribe in Palau. There was a conflict there. And this is because he could speak English, he could speak multiple different languages, and had learned the Palauan language as well. But what's interesting is that there was a British guy who comes in, Cyprian, I want to say Bridge. Was it Bridge? He had an interesting last name, but it was like Sir Cyprian something. And this guy ends up coming in and helping to negotiate the peace between these two sides because of James Gibbons as the middleman translating back and forth. Now, what's fascinating is that I decided to look up this guy, Cyprian Bridge, because obviously I never heard of him before. And I actually found records of his journals from the same time period. It would have been 1883 that this conflict was going on, and that he actually shows up in Palau to help settle it. And I found records of his journals. You could see the things that he wrote. You couldn't read anything that he wrote. It was probably the worst cursive I've ever seen. But nonetheless, the journals, the history is there. And I wish I could read it, because if I could find the record of the day or the days that he was speaking with James Gibbons and trying to work this thing out, I feel like that would have been gold. But it's just like, I tell you, like it's the most scribbles. Every single letter and every word looks the same. The only word that I could pull out, there were maybe 4 words that I could actually read in the 30 plus pages of that journal that I went through. One of them was killed. And I don't know why that's the only word that he wrote of significance, but I saw sir, and there were maybe 2 or 3 more other words that I could actually read. Like it was bad. It was pretty bad, but it's there. It's there. So for whoever can read it, props to you. I know it was like a needle in a haystack finding those journals. It's probably even more of a needle in a haystack to find someone who can read them. But yeah, history research is pretty legit, and things like that have me excited to continue researching because I don't know what I'll find, but being able to fill in the story. You know what? I'll share it. One other thing that I thought was really cool. In one of the statements on the presentation, it mentioned how there was a missionary, a self-supporting missionary from Japan who ended up starting correspondence with James Gibbons. Yeah, because he wanted to learn more about the Adventist faith and all this kind of stuff. And I ended up doing some research. I looked from the other end. Okay, who do we have that were missionaries in Japan who were connected to Palau? And I found this guy named Abram LaRue. Turns out he was from California, and he went. He was involved with like gold mining and all this kind of stuff. He was wealthy. He had some problems, so he lost kind of the wealth. And in his older years, he decided to go and be a missionary to China. And this was pretty dope because he ends up in Hong Kong and he's doing his thing there, starting up a self-supporting missionary work. That's what he's known for. And he was like the first official missionary to China, Hong Kong, in that region. So basically, long story short, in that statement on the presentation that just said a self-supporting missionary, it didn't give us any other details about who he was. But that self-supporting missionary, I said Japan, I meant China. Japan was afterwards with William Gibbons, getting all the stuff mixed up. But apparently, that self-supporting missionary was Abram LaRue. And Abram LaRue actually wrote something that was in something I found on him that said he was in correspondence with a man in Palau who wanted to know more about the Sabbath. And that man was James Gibbons. So being able to put the stories together and see how they overlap, even with these pieces that are kind of missing, it's really cool to dig in these weeds and put this complete picture of a story together. Because you can tell by the way it's written, these people are writing from this perspective and they're unaware of the people on this side. And these people over here on this side are writing from their perspective and are unaware of a lot of the stuff going on this end. So it's really fascinating to put this stuff together. Even though it's not exhaustive, it just broadens the story, which I think is really dope. But anyway, that's the power of research, and I have a long ways to go. So we out. I'm going to get back to it, but I'll catch you on the next one, right? Like, subscribe, and let me know what you think down below. Peace.